Pinball is something that has interested me for a while, but just not enough for me to try and get into it or anything. I don't even know how you would get into pinball. Like, I guess you just either know a place with pinball machines or you have one. What I've always found interesting about them is that even though they are much like video games in design, they still have a physical aspect to them. There's a real physical ball, and the boards are usually themed to different properties using real figures and other cool stuff. Now, all that stuff I just said I liked about pinball machines, yeah, I'm gonna need you to throw all that out because we're still talking about video games today. Another interesting thing to come out of pinball is the huge amount of pinball video games there are, with a whole lot of them being spin-offs of large video game series. I mean, who needs Metroid Prime 4 when you got Metroid Prime Pinball? So today, I wanted to look through some of these pinball spin-off games to see not only how well they replicate the pinball experience, but also how well they use the series they're based on to make the game unique. Some of these games did this surprisingly well, while others didn't. To start off, I felt like it would be good to take a look at a game from one of the most well-known series ever made, Super Mario. I mean, this guy is practically the gold standard of gaming and has been in so many games from so many different genres, so surely it wouldn't be that hard for the series to have a good pinball game, right? Right? So Mario Pinball Land starts off with Mario and Peach at some sort of amusement park where you get turned into a ball and shot out of a cannon. That was my favorite ride growing up. But inevitably, something goes wrong, Peach gets kidnapped, and Mario has to go save her. In ball form, of course. So instead of this game just being a play pinball, get the high score kind of deal like most versions of pinball are, this game is instead a collectathon using pinball mechanics. Just like in games like Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy, your goal is to enter a level and collect stars so you can then progress further. All of these levels each have these doors that block you from progressing further if you don't have enough stars, and each room in a level has a different objective for you to do to collect said stars. In concept, this actually sounds kinda cool to me. Like, you know, it puts a distinct Mario twist on the pinball formula. But in practice, a lot more problems seem to pop up. My biggest problem with this game is that pinball is a very random game. Yes, there is some skill in getting the ball where you want it to go, but ultimately you can never 100% guess or control what's going to happen. This is fine in a high score-based game, but in a game where you're trying to go to specific places and get specific goals done, it makes it much more frustrating. Like, I spent so much time in this game just trying to get to the next room, which just isn't really that fun. It also doesn't help that these aren't the most precise pinball controls in the world, meaning that you can't do very much to influence the direction you go, which once again isn't super helpful in a game that wants you to be able to aim exactly where you want to go. It's an interesting idea on paper, but I just don't think it was executed all that well. If you want to make a twist on the pinball formula, I think you have to be willing to put a little more effort in to really make it work, or at least make it a twist that works well with the formula that already exists. Okay, so Mario Pinball Land? Not great. But what about Kirby Pinball Land? So back on the Game Boy, Kirby actually made an attempt at a pinball spin-off long before Mario ever did. This game is similar to Mario Pinball Land in that we have more goals besides just getting a high score, but a much smaller focus is put on these things, so if you just want to play this game like a normal pinball game, you can do that. There are 3 different boards you can choose from. Wait, do you call them boards? Usually you just call it a pinball machine, but this is a game, so there isn't a machine, and for some reason calling it a board just seems right to me, so I don't know if it's right, but we're just gonna stick with it. So yeah, there's 3 different boards you can choose from, all themed around different Kirby bosses. I believe there is some sort of final boss after defeating all of the bosses on the other boards, but I'm not very good at this game, so I didn't get that far. The game feels fine enough to control for a Game Boy pinball game, and since this game is much more like traditional pinball, I don't really need it to be all that precise. This game is mostly just pinball, but with a little Kirby twist to it, which is honestly fine, and I think taking a simpler approach prevented it from having a lot of the problems I had with Mario Pinball Land. Honestly, not a whole lot to say about this one other than it's fun, it's pinball, and I like Kirby. But you see, Kirby wasn't the only person who tried out the whole pinball idea on the Game Boy. Pokemon also decided that they wanted to get in on the fun as well. Pokemon Pinball is even more like traditional pinball than even Kirby Pinball Land was. The boards you have to play are very much meant to resemble more of what you would see on a traditional pinball machine, But the game does have one big twist to it that I think makes it really stand out. To make this game feel more like a Pokemon game, they added the gimmick of actually catching Pokemon while you play pinball, which surprisingly fits really well. The ball you play the game with is a Pokeball, and by doing certain things on the board, you can cause a wild Pokemon to appear that you will then get the chance to catch. You basically get a different Pokemon every time this happens, and you have both a red and blue board you can choose from, which I believe have exclusive Pokemon, which is a fun nod to the actual games. Catching Pokemon is basically just the best way to get a higher score in the game, but on top of that you also have a full Pokédex that you can fill out, which gives the game some really good replay value for completionists. This game is honestly pretty fun, which is why eventually it got a sequel on the Game Boy Advance. Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire is basically just the original Pokemon Pinball Land, but it just plays better and has a few new things added here and there. Due to the jump in hardware, the game just plays a whole lot smoother, and there's no longer that awkward cut when you go to the top half of the board. The camera instead just follows the ball, which is a whole lot easier to look at. We also have a new way to catch Pokemon with there being an egg on the board that you can hatch and just other stuff like that, which makes this game the definitive Pokemon Pinball experience. Since this game is so similar to the first one, there isn't much more to say about it, but that's probably a good thing since that means I don't have a whole lot to complain about either. All we've seen so far is Nintendo's versions of pinball, and to be fair, that's because not a whole lot of other companies made pinball games about their mascots. Come on Sony, where's Last of Us Pinball, huh? But there is one pretty major mascot from a game company that used to be much more relevant than they are today that got a few pinball entries. I'm talking about Sonic. Sonic is a series that from the beginning had lots of levels that would feature pinball elements. Even one of the boss fights in Sonic CD is literally just pinball. So of all series to make a pinball game, Sonic probably made the most sense. So Sonic Spinball was ultimately released on the Genesis as the first Sonic pinball spin-off, and I really like it. I've seen a fair amount of people share the same opinion as me, but I've seen just as many or more say the opposite. And all I've got to say is that Spinball haters are not welcome here. If you don't like this random Sonic spin-off game from the early 90s that hasn't been relevant in years, then we just can't be friends. Should probably review the game now. So Sonic Spinball is pretty different from everything we have talked about so far. While most of these games have put some sort of twist on the pinball formula, at the end of the day, most of them are still just pinball. But Sonic Spinball, on the other hand, aims to shake things up a little bit more than usual by making this game a blend between your typical platformer and pinball. While not super common, the game does have sections where Sonic can walk around like normal, jump, and even do moves like the spin dash. On top of that, you still have some control of Sonic while in the air, which is pretty helpful for getting where you need to go. Much like Mario Pinball Land, this game isn't really focused on high scores or any of the typical pinball stuff, and is instead more about collecting these emeralds so that you can then get to the boss at the end of the level. I do think this game is set up better than a game like Mario Pinball Land, since the levels are much more open and less segmented than the levels in that game. On top of that, the amount of control you have over Sonic, even while in the air, makes going for certain objectives a lot easier and less frustrating. That's not to say that this game isn't hard at all. It can definitely be challenging, but I feel like that's more because of the very limited amount of lives you have and having to completely start over when you get a game over. I have this game on Genesis, and while it can be a fun novelty to play it on there from time to time, I ultimately think it's just better to play this on the Genesis Classics collection or Switch Online, since having access to stuff like save states can genuinely improve the game in my opinion, since you don't have to worry nearly as much about lives. I will say that in my opinion, the first level is probably the best one, and it's just kind of downhill from there, but I still like the rest of the game, just not as much as that first level. Another fun thing about the game is that after beating a level, you get access to a sort of special stage, which is just normal pinball, which I think is pretty fun. I will say that in these parts, the ball is a little too bouncy. Like, come on, this thing should be made of metal, not rubber. Overall, this game is definitely very flawed, but I also think it can be very fun. Since I like Sonic Spinball as much as I do, I was naturally curious to see where the Sonic series would go next with the whole pinball idea. The Sonic Spinball is fun, but still has a lot of problems that need to be ironed out, and hopefully they will be with Sonic's next pinball game, Sonic Pinball Party. Wait, this isn't a sequel to Sonic Spinball, it's just pinball. Who could have possibly seen this coming? So yeah, this game is pretty much just pinball, not really any big gimmicks to make it stand out all that much. I will say that, especially for the Game Boy Advance, this is a really good version of pinball, and I don't really have any problems with it. Okay, that's all, on to the next one. So since we are already talking about Sega games, we might as well talk about one of their other pinball games, Pinball of the Dead. This game is a spin-off of the House of the Dead franchise, which I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of experience with. This might actually be my first House of the Dead, and I mean, hey, you gotta start somewhere. So this game is overall a pretty traditional pinball experience, except for one major difference. You can kill zombies. This may sound stupid, but honestly, being able to kill zombies with a pinball is genuinely really satisfying and fun to do. All of the boards are pretty fun and have extra objectives to go for, like these different words you can spell out, which are obviously a reference to classic game, The Typing of the Dead. There's also stuff like bosses in this game, which is a fun little addition, but the best part of the entire game has to be the voice clips that they play, that I am assuming are from the House of the Dead games. It really adds to the entertainment value of the game. On another note, out of all the Sega franchises that got these pinball games, why in the world wasn't Monkey Ball one of them? It's literally a perfect fit. Like, the main games already have you in a ball, you could go around and collect bananas on the board. It would be great. They could call it something like Super Monkey Ball Pinball Panic, and it would have sold 1 trillion copies, trust me. I'm just now realizing that a majority of the games in this video are on the Game Boy Advance, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, yeah, I get that it's a portable system, and those are better for these arcadey type games like Pinball, but there's just so many more on the GBA than like anything else. And on that note, we have another GBA pinball game with Pac-Man Pinball Advance. It's pinball, but we got Pac-Man elements like the ghosts and the pellets, which is a cool idea and fits the pinball gameplay style surprisingly well. Too bad the boards are really boring. Maybe I've just been playing too many pinball games, but I found the 2 boards in this game to be really uninteresting. I think the concept for this game is really cool and all, but at the end of the day, it's just alright, I guess. Can you tell I'm running out of things to say about these pinball games? Okay, final game, on the DS Metroid Prime Pinball. It's actually really good. I like this one. Probably the best game in the video. So this game is kind of similar to how Pinball of the Dead was, where you have enemies and bosses that can pop up on the board, but unlike that game, we also have a lot more stuff that makes this game actually kind of feel like a Metroid game. Instead of just choosing a board and then playing that one the entire time, you can actually travel to the different areas of the game during a single gameplay session. On top of this, you can look for these artifacts, which sort of act as the main goal of the game, as well as a good way to boost your score. You can even find upgrades for Samus, which aren't the most useful thing, but it's cool that it's here since it makes it feel more like a Metroid game. Sometimes you can even get out of ball form and enter one of these shooting sections, which might throw a wave of enemies at you or allow you to attack one of the bosses easier. It's all really cool stuff. I think this is the best example of how to do a pinball spin-off because it's still very much a pinball game, but it also still feels like it fits in the Metroid series, with the game incorporating a lot of ideas from the main series games. I mean, seriously, who needs all that Metroid Prime 4 crap when you got this? Might as well cancel that game and make Metroid Prime Pinball HD instead. So those were all of the pinball spin-off games that I found for this video. A lot of these games ended up feeling very similar to each other, which I honestly probably should have seen coming, because I mean, it's a video about pinball games. What did I expect? But when these games were good, I found myself having a lot of fun with them. Sonic Spinball and Metroid Prime Pinball in particular, I really enjoyed. Oh, wait a minute. No. Oh no, I forgot one. Oh, I forgot Austin Powers Pinball. No, they're gonna kill me.